Well, here we are. This is it. This is the City Hall of Monte Sereno, and I just love when you're looking straight ahead and you see that seal behind us. And when you talk about Monte Sereno, you can't really talk about the history and look back over the years without having this man next to me, Lon Allan. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
I usually see you in Los Gatos, but we won't say that. We're only talking Monte Sereno.
It's because, as you well know, Monte Sereno is 100% residential. No filling station, no 7-Eleven. So commercially, we are members of Los Gatos.
Unless I come to your house and you didn't invite me, where was I going to talk to you?
Any day at 5 o'clock, if you want a glass of wine, just come
Red
on.
or white?
Your choice.
Okay, I'll be there. I'll get your address before I leave. Yeah, Lon Allan is so much part of this city. You've been living here over 40 years, I think.
42 years now.
Do you mind? In the same house, right?
Same house.
Do you mind if I asked what you paid for it?
Yes. Let's just say I wouldn't want to buy it today. When we bought this house, I was able to afford it, and I was in my mid-30s.
Yeah.
I'm now in my late 70s, and I today could not afford to buy the house that I'm living in.
Oh, well, I think that's true for almost all of us,
Yeah.
except for us newbies who have just moved in. But yeah, it's amazing. It is amazing what the home prices are now. Do you ever look around and say, how can this be?
Well, I worry about it because we bought our first house 50 years ago. That was in Cupertino, not in Monte Sereno. And I was 27 years old. Mary wasn't working because we had two young kids, so she had retired from being a school teacher. And at age 27, I was able to buy a house in Cupertino. 27-year-olds today cannot buy a house in Cupertino. Now, I will tell you what that cost, because I was raised in Detroit and Mary was raised in Cleveland, and her father and my father are both gone now, but I was never able to tell them what we paid for this first house because my father would have thought he had raised an idiot, and Mary's father would have thought that his daughter had married an idiot. Well, the punchline is that lovely Dietz Crane right by Monte Vista High School we got for $44,000.
You know, my first house I bought, and I was, I think, 29 years old. It was in San Jose. Brand new house, 1,400 square feet, $105,000. $105,000.
No, it is
crazy.
It is. It's more like Europe now. When I went to school in Paris, most everybody lived in rented flats their whole life. I mean, very few people actually own something. And you read the same papers I do. Home ownership is going down because back then they said, well, your mortgage, the total mortgage shouldn't be more than 3 times your annual salary. Well, today, unless you're Larry Ellison, your mortgage is going to be more than 3 times your...
And if you were Larry Ellison, he would have bought this whole town, right?
Well, half of Mary is still a referring agent with Sereno, and half the sales in Monte Sereno are cash sales, and for the so-called low-income housing at the hacienda.
Yes.
If you buy one of the threeplexes, or buy one of the units at a threeplex or one of the units at a fourplex, that's $2 million.
Really?
And if you want one of the little freestanding townhouses, which are far away from each other as I am from you, they go up to, I think, $3.7 million. So it may be high density. It is not certainly low income.
So are the new residents of Monte Sereno, well, they're obviously, I think, techies. Are they young? Are they middle-aged? Are they older?
No, they're people with the houses. That's the other thing. When we bought in the 70s, I think the average house size was 2,500, 3,000 square feet. They now build what I call McMansions, where the houses are, I think in Monte Sereno they could be, I want to say 6,700 square feet, but I'm sure someone's going to call you and say, I got the number wrong. But
is there a limit?
Yes, there is. Even on the 1-acre lots, just like there's setback lines, there's limits. And I want to say it's 6,500 or 6,700 square feet. If you have an acre lot, if you have a half acre or eighth of an acre, then obviously the size of the house goes down. but they're, everything now, all the new things are on the 1 acre lots are the maximum,
Yes.
whatever that number is, it's the maximum size. So it's people with families, and but you're right, they're techies because it's like buying in Beverly Hills. It's
right.
very, very expensive.
Now, are these new families coming in, are they community minded, or are they just, we got this beautiful house, moving in, and they work?
Well, no, actually, I have a next door neighbor who has 2 daughters. One is 13, one is 8 or 9, and over the back fence. And I sort of told her about the town, and she's now on the Site and Architectural Commission.
Wonderful. So tell us about the town. Tell us about that. Pretend we're your next door neighbor, just moved in. Tell us about Monte Sereno.
Well, I retired from law practice in '03. That's 18 years ago. And if you're retired in today's computer world, you can manage your investments from anywhere in the world. The reason we still live here is a congenial town. It has a quasi-rural feel of 90 or 95% of the streets don't have sidewalks. About 80% of the lots are 1 acre lots, so there are trees, it's fresh air. Because if you could afford to live here, you could also afford to buy a condo in downtown San Jose or a condo in San Francisco. So if you want to be in a high density, very urban thing, you could do so. But I think it's important that we have neighborhoods for those who want the quasi-rural thing, that you have the choice to do it. And it offers that very little transiency. There are only 7 houses on my street, and even though we've been there 42 years, we're still not the longest resident on that street. So I think people come and stay, they raise their children. We moved here, I was 35, Mary was 33. We raised our kids here. Our son went to a boarding school in New England, but our daughter's a graduate of Los Gatos High School. It's a great place to raise a family. The demographics are very good.
Now, why would you say it's a great place to raise a family?
Because, I think the demographics over our back fence, Jürgen was born in Dusseldorf. His wife was born in Taiwan. Over the other fence, Ilya and Ina were born in Moscow. The neighbor next door, they were both born in Seoul, Korea.
We have a United Nations here.
It is, and I think, and you see that reflected in Dave's Avenue School or Fisher Junior High or Los Gatos High School. And I think it's very healthy for kids to be brought up in that kind of neighborhood. I think it's Steve and I have talked about it. Of the 15 cities in the county, Monte Sereno is the only one where the registration's about 50-50 Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
So we're half blue, half red. But we don't have those problems at our city council meetings, as opposed to some neighboring cities. So it is, because we thought, when I retired, it was, well, should we, move to San Francisco? Should we move to, Honolulu? But there's so much richness in this area, in the valley. If I could paraphrase, I forget, in the Victorian age, who
a little
said,
before my time.
that, he said, if one is tired of London, one is tired of life. I think if one is tired of Silicon Valley, one is tired of life, because you could pursue any interest, and as you and I have discussed, if most of us in the Valley have intellectually stimulating careers. Well, we're able to have intellectually stimulating retirement. So, I served as mayor here after I retired from law practice, and then on the grand jury, and now on the Juvenile Justice Commission. There are all these things where you can be involved and not only keep your mind engaged, but give back to the community, because it's still a small area. I think.
What do we have, about 3,600 people?
35, that's very good. 3501, according to the little sign you read.
Well, that was, now. Next week, a new baby could be born. You never know.
Well, people who are moving in, all my new neighbors have young children where they wanted to have the elbow room, and it's nice because it's quiet in Monte Sereno. So, we leave our windows open, and it's nice to hear children playing in the yard.
Love it.
Next
Love
door.
that
So
sound.
it is. So we've decided that this is
heaven.
This is heaven. This is our retirement home, and we've also decided that Mary and I really aren't the type. We don't want to live in a high-rise condo. We like being able to spend time outside. We have a fire pit in the backyard, and in the evening, as I say, it's absolutely silent here. If you're in downtown San Jose, or certainly if you're in downtown San Francisco, really too noisy to leave your windows open.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so no, I think
You don't leave your doors unlocked, though, do you? I don't know. What's crime like here?
no. Well, Monte Sereno, very. You could interview the interim police chief, Clint Tata, but we're very fortunate, not to jinx it, but on my street, there in the 42 years we lived there, we haven't had a burglary.
Fabulous. Fabulous.
So-
So what did you think, for a while there, your only commercial venture, and I guess it really wasn't in Monte Sereno, so to speak, Hacienda Restaurant, which I grew up at every Sunday with my parents. Did you want it to disappear?
No, I liked the Hacienda because years ago, the county bar, we used to have our evening meetings there, and of course it's convenient. It's walking distance. Maybe it's a mile and a half from my home.
Well, the whole town is only, what 1.6 miles?
1.6 square miles, as I told you before. It's 1,000 acres of land, 1,200 residences. And the great thing about a small town is you get to know people, whether you're in Lenardi's or at the bank or the post office, you live in a town 40 years, you get to know people, and I think if you're in LA or SF, you don't.
Well, Hacienda was the gathering spot for many, many years.
Yeah, it wasn't, it was actually unincorporated county, and it just incorporated because the people in Sacramento said we needed high density housing, and we don't have any open space in the city. So actually that 4.3 acres was annexed, so it's now actually part of the city of Monte Sereno.
So before we go back in time many, many years, let's go back to 1989. What was it like being in Monte Sereno during the earthquake?
Well, you had good luck or bad luck. We had good luck. We have two chimneys. They fell away from our house. My next door neighbor, his chimneys fell through the roof into the house. My late mother always said that even when you're having bad luck, you need good luck. Earthquakes are sort of like mixed jelly beans. One neighbor's house is destroyed and the one next door isn't because of the harmonics. I'm not a physicist, but the harmonics. Downtown Los Gatos, you remember, a lot of those old brick buildings went down because they didn't have steel rebars, and we went through a big, on East Main Street, more on East Main Street than I think on North Santa Cruz. We had to repair, a lot of the buildings there.
But if you drove through Monte Sereno, did you see a lot of damage?
No, you really didn't. Now, we had a lot of, I was president of the board of Villa Montalvo during this, and we had and Montalvo was built just after the San Francisco earthquake.
Right.
So the late Senator Phelan did put in what they knew back in 1907 or 8 or 9 about earthquake things. But we still had a fair amount of damage to the original villa there that we had to repair because the technology had changed in 100 years. But I think you really saw the damage if you were on East Main Street.
Okay.
The residential things, most houses like, even the neighbor's house, you'd have to look carefully and say, oops, the chimney is,
Right.
because most chimneys are sort of in the back of the house, not the front of the house.
Did the town come together? I keep calling you a town, you're a city, and I do know that. 1957. But I mean, did the people come together? Did you look out for each other? And did you say, is your power on or is your power off? I need to help. I mean, who
no, we
are
did
these
see.
people?
Our daughter was at Los Gatos High School at the time, and she had a lot of classmates who lived over the hill, and 17 was closed, and there was a lot of damage over there. So for a month or two, I think we had 2 or 3 young ladies, classmates from Los Gatos High School, stayed at our house, and we had to get notes from their parents in case they needed medical help, which was hard because remember in the late 80s we didn't have the internet.
Hard
So
to believe. How did
know.
we live?
Well, I remember in '90 when Margot started USC, it was sort of a laptop computer, and I think that was clearly before the MacBooks. So I think, I forget what kind she had, but they were pretty primitive. But in high school, I don't think when she was at Los Gatos High School that anybody had computers. And I always complained because by the time computers really came out in the late 90s, I'd been out of law school almost 30 years, so I had young lawyers doing that stuff for me. So I was a Luddite for a while because I didn't have to learn how to use this.
Yeah.
I was a yellow pad number 2 pencil kind of guy.
Well, how many streets are there in Monte Sereno?
That I don't know. I know we have about 1,200 houses. When I was mayor, I think we had 2,230 registered voters out of the 3,500 citizens. I told you the party registration's about 50-50. And as I said, most streets, 90% of our streets, or 95, don't have sidewalks, don't have street lights, because we've gone out of our way to have this quasi-rural thing, and we're able to do it because the commercial area is in Los
Not here,
Gatos.
right.
And
I mean, so do people know each other?
well, we know all of our neighbors, but what we've done is the streets are such that our closest neighbors don't live on the same street because of the way the city's laid out. So we put friendship gates in the fences so we can walk
Nice.
back and forth. It's also safer in the evening if you have a couple glasses of wine, then you don't have to get in your car, right? You can just walk home.
So we had the '89 earthquake, and then I guess really the last big community thing we had was, of course, going on now with COVID. How has COVID affected Monte Sereno?
Well, again, as we don't have commercial activity, I think it's probably, in certain retail areas where stores are closed, restaurants are closed. Monte Sereno, other than, the Dave's Avenue School, the City Hall, and the Baptist Church.
That's it.
That's it. And so when we were sheltered in place, the City Hall was closed. I guess the school was closed, and I assume the church was closed.
It was.
But fortunately, COVID happened when we had Zoom. So it's still now. I've been on the Juvenile Justice Commission for 15 or 16 months. All of our meetings are by Zoom, and I don't know. Even when we have meetings, it'll be interesting because Zoom is so efficient. We have a monthly meeting that's open to the public, and we have 50 or 60 people attended. Well, we used to have it at the district attorney's office, but to have 50 or 60 people drive on the freeway, kicking up smoke, and then 50 or 60 people looking for parking places. And depending where you live, it might take you an hour to get there for a 2 or 3 hour meeting, an hour to get home. So we've talked about that even when we're allowed to have in-person meetings, maybe we just have a couple a year, but for most of the meetings just continue by Zoom because it's so efficient.
It is so efficient. How many people Zoom in on your town or your city council meetings?
As I'm not on the council.
That's right.
When you interview Steve Leonardis, that's a
Yes.
question. When I was on the council, we did have the meetings live on radio. We didn't have them televised, but now we are fortunate to have a former councilman, Burton Craig, who's on the KCAT board. And I think, does Burton still do the...
And we will be talking to him as well.
I should have gotten, when I was on the KCAT board, I brought Burton on, and I didn't negotiate enough of a finder's fee with KCAT because Burton has been a great addition to the KCAT board, and he was a great, when he was on the council, he was the one who was the power behind our youth commission here, and as we talked about before the interview, getting these kids involved in government, because since Watergate, there's been so much cynicism about government, and I think it's important for people to get involved. The biggest problem in local government is, other than KCAT, the Mercury News really doesn't cover what's happening here, and the Los Gatos Weekly no longer has Judy Peterson or anybody doing articles. So if you speak to anybody in the city council, they'll tell you the hardest thing is keeping the residents informed of what's going on, so that they can be involved.
In the old days, you'd meet at the post office. But Monte Sereno doesn't have a post office. What happened to that post office?
Well, as the terrorist groups say, I claim responsibility.
Every small town has a post office.
Well, this wasn't a real post office. It was sort of a franchise we had. It was open from 9 to 12, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you rented your post office box from the post office, not from the city of Monte Sereno. Well, the problem was the cost of the community keeping the post office. It cost us, we were underwriting each post office box by about $1,000 a year, and only about 15% of the holders were Monte Sereno residents. The other 85%. So the cost to the residents of Monte Sereno was just not justifiable to have it. Though I will say that I took a lot of heat from people like you who said you need it, but when you put pencil to paper in terms of our budget, I felt, and it was a unanimous vote of the city council, that we just couldn't justify the cost of having the post office here.
So what kind of disputes do you have over the years? I do remember, I looked up, I of course went on Googled Monte Sereno. I guess there was a big neighborhood Christmas fight in 2007, I think, over, I guess somebody just over-decorated their house. Well, they would not think it was over-decorated.
It wasn't it was the traffic. It caused congestion on the street where neighbors said they couldn't get involved. But your next interviewee, Burton Craig, may remember, I don't recall that we on the city got involved, but as Burton is so much younger than his memory is probably better.
I think there was some. We'll talk to Burton about
ask
it.
Burton. But it wasn't the decorations themselves. It was that for 4 to 6 weeks, you're really starting around Thanksgiving time. Neighbors said at night it was hard getting in on our driveway.
What street was that? Do you remember?
I don't
either.
I don't remember.
But that brought out some neighbors. That caused some angst. Yeah.
But
what other brouhahas?
We had the big brouhaha about the hacienda, of whether we should have high density housing, and occasionally we had brouhahas about the speed limit on Dave's Avenue in front of the school, and there are now 2 stop signs there that were just added in the last few years right in front of the school, and crosswalks put in because when we moved here there weren't those stop signs. But actually, very few issues like that, as opposed to I can't think of other major things that impacted Monte Sereno. The people here, and again, Burton will tell you that 90% of our council meetings, there are more of us sitting up here than people in the audience. When I was on the planning commission, well, we call it site and architectural because
it's Monte Sereno.
It's Monte Sereno,
Of
so
course,
we need a
thank you.
Tony term. Now, we used to get a lot of people at the planning commission because things on the agenda affected the homeowner who was asking for something, and the neighbors were here either to support it or to raise questions about it. So at Site and Architecture Commission, you actually get a fair number of attendees. But the Council Commission, unless there's something on the agenda that really impacts you, now frankly, I think anybody who's served on the council would say, we wish we had more people getting involved because, you know, we are all, you serve on the Monte Sereno Council, you don't get a salary, you don't get an honorarium, you don't get insurance.
All you get is headaches.
Well, I've said no one comes to, well, it's rare that someone comes to a council meeting to say, you know, Lon, we just want to thank you for the job you're doing. Typically, if they offer a comment, it is a criticism of what you've done, not a gratitude for what you've done.
You can't remember any of those big criticisms, or can you?
Oh, well, I got a
What
lot
did
of
people complain about?
Well, the biggest complaint I got was that we wanted to avoid having the 36 units on the
Yes.
4 acres there. So we said, well, we could allow the church to have housing for members of the church or retirees, but they never have to build it. We just have to authorize it, and then we've satisfied the state requirements. There was very strong reaction from people there who didn't even want the zoning, even though the church had no obligation to build the housing. And that was probably the most pushback I got when I was mayor. The second thing I got pushback on was when I led the charge to close the post office. Other than those two things, and again, you could ask Burton, I don't recall other things where my name was taken in vain by my fellow residents.
Well, looking back in time, because you know, when you get on the city council, I mean, you read the history. I mean, when you look back to 1957, were there things that happened and you said, why did they do that?
Well, the biggest thing, if you look at the boundaries, it is, you know, it's almost like an octopus where this street is Monte Sereno and that street is Los Gatos and that street is county. And even on a given street, I have a friend who lives on Carl, and 2 doors down, his neighbor is either Los Gatos or county on the same street. So I don't know.
And are they paying different taxes? I guess so.
That is a very good question, but certainly they're not paying, well, we don't have city taxes. We get
you're right.
5.5 or, again, as we're 5.5 or 6% of the property taxes go. Our only really dedicated source of revenue is building permits, this and that. This year, because of how PG&E is turning off the power, Mary and I decided to actually put a backup generator. And of course, when you do anything at your house, the contractor says, well, do you want to get a permit? And I said, well, as a former mayor, I think we should. And so to have the city come out and look at it, which took 10 minutes, it was a $1,400 fee that I did have to pay to the city to get a permit. So I think that's our major dedicated thing. And actually at 5.5%, we get less of the property tax dollar than neighborhood cities, because back in '57, the late Admiral Inglis said, oh, you know, we don't need the dough. And so I think there are 15 cities in the county. I think we get a smaller percentage of the property tax dollar than any of the other 14 cities. But we're in the black. I think we're the most solvent city in the county. When I was on the council, we had a couple of years operating expenses, cash in the bank. I think most cities in the county, if they have a couple, 3 months operating expenses, they're doing well. But we're sort of old-fashioned, you know.
In what way?
We don't spend money we don't have.
You don't.
It's, you know.
But what would you spend it on? Maybe
Well,
a new community center?
Well, we are going to have a new, the other side of closing the post office is we're turning that into a community center. And I think the city needs that because, as you talked about with the hacienda, we don't really have a place to congregate or for city groups, the youth commission or scouts or whatever. I think it's going to be very positive in terms of a sense of community. And I think that having a community center will be much better for the city and the residents than, frankly, having a franchise post office there.
Well, how big is that place?
I guess it's, I don't know, 1,500 square feet.
Is
I've never,
it?
yeah, I think it's certainly bigger than this room.
So I got to ask you, can't let you leave without two questions. Give me a couple famous people other than Thomas Kincaid and Billy Jones and John Steinbeck. Who else has lived in Monte Sereno? And Lon Allan, of course.
Other than the people you mentioned, the only other one I'd mention is I've heard a rumor, which I can't substantiate, is that the Terminator's in the process of buying a home in Monte Sereno.
Really?
That's what
Really?
my source is the electrician who worked on putting this backup generator in my house.
They're the ones who know. That kind of leads into I was going to say, you have any secrets to share with us? Well, you just shared one.
So,
but any other secrets?
It's not a secret, but I will offer advice to any women who see this. Mary, who is
your lovely wife of how many years? 53?
53 years. In 35 years ago, when I was in my early 40s, it is true that a fellow starts to look around. She went out on her own and bought me a Porsche 911, and she said, "Bozo, this is your mistress. This is your only mistress." And so my claim to fame is not that I've been married to the same woman for 53 years, but I've had the same mistress for 35 years.
And what color did she get you?
Champagne.
Okay, there.
Champagne.
Okay, she knew you had expensive taste.
I have no complaints. I do have one complaint. When we got married in the 60s, we decided that back then that $10 a week pocket money was all I needed. And in 53 years, she's never increased that amount. And so I say, you could trust me, honey, because on $10 a week, I can't afford a girlfriend.
That's right. That's right. And no little secrets about Monte Sereno that maybe people aren't aware of. You've lived here for over 40 years. You got to know something that the rest of us don't.
I think, I say, people stay here. If there was some place in the world that we rather live when I retired in 2003, we would have moved there. And we stay here because it's just a great community, and when we moved here in the 70s, I had a job and we had young kids, and now 42 years later I'm retired, and my youngest child will turn 50 this year. And we're still here because it's just a great place to live.
Is there any talk of them maybe moving into the family house someday?
I think it's too big for them. Our daughter and son-in-law live in Campbell, in a house because it's just the two of them, and our son has the last 25 years lived in Phoenix. I don't think he's coming back.
I don't think so either.
But no, and the house, the sad thing is when the house is sold, as it's only 4,000 square feet, I'm sure they'll scrape it. They'll scrape it and put in a McMansion, because that seems to be what people want.
Well, I almost think they should leave a plaque on it, the home of Mary and Lon Allan.
Absolutely.
True Monte Sereno residents who really have a love for this city.
Well, it's a great place to live, and I think if people have as I say, people move in, they typically don't move out. One last thing, I thought, I tease my friends in Saratoga that they try to sneak over Quito Road at night because that's the border. And I almost thought that I could have a campaign where we'd put up a wall on Quito Road and have Saratoga pay for it.
Now you're talking. Because remember, you don't spend money. You guys only spend what you need to. You are a delight, and you are now part of the history more than you knew because you were part of this project. So we've got you on tape, and 80 years from now, people are going to be looking at you and say, he was right. He didn't need the post office.
From your lips to God's ears, Lissa.
Thank
Well,
you, Lon.
Thank you.
You are wonderful. Lon Allan, Mayor 2016.
Right.
Mayor of this wonderful town. All right, you're off the hot seat.
Thank you.
You were wonderful. And I'm coming over for wine.
Any day. Any day.
We're gonna do that.